Good evening, good people. This is your host, Calvin Anderson, for the Check In With podcast, season two. It's been amazing thus far, and today we have another special guest with us today. She is newly qualified, and she is a music therapist. And I'm so excited to hear her just insight, her knowledge, her journey, and the things she's learned from being a trainee to now being fully in the field, which I say welcome to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to Andrea Jardine. Andrea, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I said your name wrong, innit?
Yeah. No, it's all good. It's all good.
What I'll do is in the edit, I'll just like re-record me saying Andrea
Yeah.
Jardine. So yeah, we'll go
Yeah.
again.
Fine.
But yes, tell me, how have you been? How are you? Yeah, give us that.
Yeah, things are good. So I qualified as a music therapist back in July 2024
Yeah.
and just spent a few months just kind of letting myself process, take it in. The training was very intense, and now I've been more actively looking for music therapy work, which will hopefully be starting in the next few months.
Mhm.
So between pretty much finishing up and now, I've been focusing on my private violin teaching and also playing violin at weddings.
What other instruments do you play? So violin.
Yes. So I started learning piano when I was 17. For a little bit, I get by. I'm okay. I'm not Mozart. And before starting my training, I taught myself ukulele, which I absolutely love playing. I love just how simple it is. Even if you just strum it with like open strings, you're making a chord.
Yeah.
And I like to do some singing well, which I brought into which I did a lot of in my music therapy practice on placement. I was a very quite anxious about singing, but now that's something that I just love to do.
Amazing. What's the next instrument you want to learn or gonna go for?
Oh, so I've been looking at guitar. I don't know why I find it so difficult. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's going from four strings to six. So I'm gonna work on adding on those extra two strings and see what happens. And yep, guitar, and I'd love to learn the harp. That would be really cool. That's something that's kind of been like maybe a lifelong dream, but yeah, we'll go to guitar first and then I'll master all the other string instruments. We'll take it one instrument at a time.
Andrea, give us your journey into music therapy. How did you get into it, and what entails music therapy? Like, what is it? Give us the benefits. Yeah, why music therapy specifically out of all the modalities out there?
So with for so me going getting into music therapy, so obviously um I am a violinist, classically trained, and I started learning that instrument when I was 8 years old in school. And kind of around the same time, I was quite shy in school, but it got to a point where it wasn't just shyness, it was more anxiety. And I remember around the time of learning the violin, I also went to go to a therapist for the first time. And that was something that I didn't talk to anyone about. Even in school, I didn't tell my friends that I was going to therapy because back then it was kind of seen as like there was something wrong with you and it was very negative connotations. And when I was a teenager, so I think it was around the time my granddad passed away, I found myself playing the violin more. And I found kind of afterwards, I would just kind of get like in a trance where I was just kind of very in the moment, and the anxieties I had, they were still there, but things seemed more manageable. So I kind of noticed that there was some kind of link between music with my mental health. And when I was applying for university, it was towards the end of high school. I'd heard of the role of music therapist, and I had no idea what that meant. But I was about 17, and I just thought that sounds really cool. I want to do that, maybe. And then going into university, I did a performance degree. So it was about 50% performance and 50% academic. And even though music did have positive benefits on my mental health, it also had negative ones. So I discovered that performing in front of people or in a performance exam, it wasn't for me. I had crippling stage anxiety, and to kind of overcome that, obviously, I still get nervous playing from time to time. It's very natural to feel nervous from there. But I looked at just doing performing outside of my degree. So it was kind of something that I was doing it just for me, and it wasn't just for, oh, this is going towards like 10%, 15% of my grade. And that kind of got me to kind of enjoy playing again. So I think, yeah, that was something I kind of lost that enjoyment of just playing. And we also did a module which was an introduction to music therapy. And from starting that module, it just kind of clicked. I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. Just because of the kind of for the academic side and also the playing. And I really liked the fact that there's no right or wrong notes to play. Yeah, so then from then I had like a bit of tunnel vision towards becoming a music therapist. And just because of the kind of impact that music has had on my mental health and kind of my own experience of going to therapy. The reason with music therapy that I decided to go into it is because the music's the main medium. So rather than kind of your traditional therapy where you're doing a lot of talking in music therapy, it can be purely just playing music with someone else, or it can be a mix of speaking and the music there. So I love just how open and accessible it is, especially for maybe people that struggle to communicate, or if they have feelings that are just so overwhelming that they kind of struggle to put words to it. There is a lot of research that doing something creative like music or art, it can kind of bring up and kind of help someone make sense of what they're going through, or even if they're not sure, it's just, I don't know what's happening, let's play some music. And I just love how just simple it is. It's that relationship between the client and the therapist, but also it's very relational, like making music with someone. It's just like it's a shared experience, which is what I really value from it. And I'm excited to kind of start my career in that properly and just see where it goes.
That is such an amazing thing just to hear how it helps you in your journey and through the losses and through adversity, and now being able to use it to help other people. I think that's such an incredible thing.
Thank you.
Speak to me now on, I guess, training and now being in the field. Like, how does that feel
Mhm.
for you?
For a good few months, it felt very surreal. I felt like I was kind of in a bubble. Like after qualifying, I was just like, oh my God, I did it. Like, now what? So with the training, so with music therapy and also art and drama therapy and play therapy as well, it's a 2-year full-time master's degree. And I took a few years out between finishing my undergrad and starting my master's, and that was probably the best thing to do. So when I graduated from my undergrad, it was almost 5 years ago during lockdown. I was only 21 and now I'm 26. So it's mad to think that I finished uni for the first time 5 years ago. And during that time, it was very uncertain about what was going to happen with live music and the arts in general. And initially, I wanted to just take 1 year out, but I started a job as a pupil support assistant in a primary school in Edinburgh, where I'm currently living and working. And I started that job right before the end of 2020. So then we had the Christmas break and also second lockdown. So I was thrown straight into like lockdown two. So it was working with children who, for different reasons, they couldn't like be at home for school. So they were either children of the key workers or children with additional needs. So them being at home, it would kind of maybe disrupt your routine or their learning. So it was very hard and challenging, but it was very rewarding, and they kept me on permanently. So I must have done a good job. But I didn't feel ready to like leave that job. But they were very supportive because they knew about my kind of like goals to study music therapy, and my boss there in particular was very encouraging with that. So when I got into the course, everyone was very excited for me, and I felt very supported going in. And it was a bit of a shock, kind of going back into full-time education. And the days were very intense. I had 2 days on campus in my first year, and then 1 day on placement. And then in my final year, it was 2 days on placement and 1 day on campus. So even though we weren't in like 5 days a week, it was a lot of reading we'd have to do, a lot of reflecting. I kind of felt like a teenager again, like writing in like my reflective journal. But then, if I could compare the two journals, it was thought process is very different from there. Yeah, so there was the training. It's a lot of the kind of we learned a lot about the psychodynamic theory. So on my course where I studied at Queen Margaret University, which is, I feel like I'm doing a big advert for them, which is
Mhm.
the only university in Scotland to offer a music therapy course. Um, and we would have classes shared with the art and drama therapy learners. And I really valued that, just kind of hearing from the different modalities and kind of seeing where we would have similarities, where we would have differences, and just kind of celebrate and respect every profession. So we would have classes on kind of psychodynamic theory, which was very new to me. I think I'd only heard about attachment theory, and then, um, but then from there, it's very fascinating and seeing just kind of the development of psychotherapy, and of course, it does. As research went on, it does influence the arts therapies practice, and it's something that just evolves over time. So I would say with the approach there, I'm informed. I'm not a music psychotherapist, but I am informed by the psychodynamic theory. So thinking about kind of the past experiences that kind of make us who we are today, or working a lot with the subconscious that's going on, and working with that kind of uncertainty from there, and also from a resource oriented approach, which is looking at the person's existing kind of skills that they have, and working with what they have rather than focusing on what they don't have. So with that, we can really empower the people that we work with. And the training, there was a lot of music making as well, which was really, really, it was just really nice because I'd really missed playing with people, um, because COVID kind of put a hold on that. And the placement was great. I had a very, very supportive supervisor on both my placements actually, and I'm still in touch with both of them now, which is great. And yeah, we just got experience of working alongside a music therapist, which was great for the first year because you're basically, the way that I see it now as I reflect, I was very new to it. So I kind of learned all that. Yeah, so I kind of like learned what it is to be a therapist and how to plan sessions. And then with that, and then using that space, it was like space to kind of make mistakes, learn from them. But you have that support and that supervision there. And then our final year placement, we got to go to places where they'd never had a music therapy service before. So it was experience of kind of how to set that up and kind of working autonomously. And I loved both my placements, but I felt that I felt like a proper music therapist on that final year placement. But yeah, the support that I had through my time training, and also in my dissertation as well. I was so glad to get my dissertation done. Yeah, it was a difficult time because it's just not an easy thing to study and I think you're never prepared for how intense it is to become a therapist. So I really valued kind of my own personal therapy which is a requirement in the music therapy training and the arts therapy training as well. So I really made full use of that. And yeah, I'm always kind of open and love hearing from people that get in touch with me saying that they're interested in studying music therapy. I love kind of chatting with them and hearing about that, and also offering advice. And they need that. So yeah, it's great. We need music therapists. We need arts therapists.
Yeah, I think that's so key. Because as you said earlier on, someone may not be comfortable in talking,
Yes.
so they may want to just have another um person who delivers therapy for a creative style, as such as yourself, whether it be music, whether it be dance, whether it be
Mhm.
art or play, and then be able to use that medium or use that approach to fully express, okay, this is how I feel, this is what's on my mind, and this is how I feel in my body as well. So yeah, I think it's so powerful. I think the arts
Mhm.
approaches are very impactful. And I feel like they definitely need to have more light shone upon them.
Mhm.
Yes, they definitely have an awareness, but I feel like in terms of just the benefits of what the art therapies or the creative therapies have, I think definitely need to have a more of a look in. Um,
Absolutely.
as much as the ones that have been here for, you know, a very long time, or I should say the ones that are in the main uh stream lens, I should say. No, that's amazing. That is so impactful. I'm wondering from you now, from just everything you've said, where do you see the music therapy field or the creative approaches going or being in the next 5 years?
I think I definitely see it evolving even more and growing, especially in Scotland, where there was a bit of uncertainty regarding funding from the Scottish government in the creative fields. And recently, a lot of creative organisations have received funding from Creative Scotland, which is amazing. And in particular, my home region of Dumfries and Galloway has received a lot of financial support, which I think it's the first time that they've received that in with regards to the arts. So it would be great for the kind of creative arts therapies to make it to more rural areas in Scotland. There is a lot of it across Edinburgh, Glasgow, the Central Belt, and I'm not too sure about it in the Highlands and Islands up north.
Yeah.
And I know that further, like down south, I just say this because that's where I'm originally from in Scotland. There's not a lot of it there, and so I decided that for my final year placement, I went back home to
Mm.
kind of offer. So I did my placement back home with the NHS in Dumfries and Galloway, and I think they'd had music therapy there maybe over a decade ago, but nothing since then. And there seems to be more with the kind of arts in healthcare where it might not necessarily be music therapy or art therapy, but it's using that kind of those community outreach programs, or using the art, like music or art in a therapeutic way. That seems to be, or creative health and well-being is what they call it. That seems to be kind of coming on the rise as well. And they are incredibly important, the work that community musicians do. But then there's that kind of there seems to sometimes be a kind of misunderstanding of music as like music in a therapeutic way or music therapy. So with again with any kind of therapy, the person would have to be registered and fully qualified to practice that. But it's not to say that community music, for example, is bad or not good. It is. They are very important, and so it's important to look at those kind of roles and see where community music and music therapy might have an overlap, and just kind of learn from one another. So there's, even though with those activities they can really benefit someone's mental health, but then if there's anything that they need to explore kind of deeper or in a more individual place, that's where the kind of arts therapies would come in to really help unpack that in that safe space where someone who's fully trained and qualified in that way of delivering therapy can come in from there.
Collaboration.
Yes, exactly.
And that's definitely something we need more of, and I guess needs to be seen as well.
Mhm.
Because I guess the one thing that is always in sometimes mentioned is our field or our profession can be very isolating.
Mhm.
It can be very, you're to yourself, you're with your approach, you have your clients, but and yes, you have colleagues and people you may touch in with, but just overall, some people can be left or felt like they are alone. So I love that. I love the sense of, yes, collaboration, more collaboration, more putting ideas together, saying, hey, I'm from this approach, but I'd love to know what you think of this. If we both looked at the same case study or looked at the same client, how can we work
Mhm.
together to make
Mhm.
this client's life more enriching from both sides? Which I think would be
Mhm.
definitely amazing. Speak to me now on your lived experience.
So, my lived experience. So, yeah, I would say when I was in primary school, I had a lot of anxieties and where I felt from what my parents have said, it was very my teachers described it as very shy, and in my reports, it would be an absolute delight to have in class, but needs to speak more. And it would even be small things like if my parents were helping me with homework, if they did it in a different way, I would tell them like, no, no, the teacher does it this way. I'll get in trouble if I do that. And that kind of became more and more obvious. So then that's when my parents kind of reached out for further support, and that's where I started going to see a therapist. And I remember I didn't want to talk in the sessions if my parents were in the room, or I just didn't really want to be there. And sometimes when I do think about that, I wonder if maybe a more creative approach, like maybe art therapy or even music therapy, might have been more beneficial for me at that time, because I didn't know why I was going to see a therapist. I thought it was just because But I thought there was something wrong with me because I was shy, and therapy had always been seen as something for people that were insane. Or um, I remember I was always terrified that I would end up going into a psychiatric hospital, and then I actually did do my placement there for my music therapy placement. So I often like think about, oh, I don't want to end up in that hospital. Now I'm like, oh, I'm doing my placement here. It's yeah, it is what it is.
Mm.
And even just in yeah, just kind of growing up, it was a lot of kind of anxieties that I had. And then before I was I remember it like quite well. It was maybe around this time 9 years ago, I got diagnosed with ASD. And I refused to kind of accept it because kind of autism or neurodiversity, which is kind of the term that they use now, in my school, it was seen as a really negative thing. So I just kind of kept it to myself and like family. And eventually I felt comfortable telling friends, but I just had this idea of if I tell people, they're going to treat me differently or I'm going to lose all my friends. And yeah, it was difficult kind of during my undergrad because I carried a lot of kind of shame around it.
Yeah.
And I think it was just because I could accept other people being like autistic or having ADHD, but it was in myself. I just couldn't accept it. And then I did eventually feel more comfortable telling people, but I did often have times where if I would disclose it to people, they would treat me differently. Like they would start talking to me like louder and slower as if I didn't understand what was happening, or they would kind of like talk at me and not to me, which and I did know like I am quite hyper vigilant that way. And it wasn't until I started my job in the school where I was working with children with additional needs. So it was children with suspected ADHD, ASD. Um, then I felt more comfortable in myself. and I disclosed it to my work, and they were incredibly supportive. And then I just kind of now I feel like a lot more comfortable sharing it with people. And it was interesting doing my first year placement where I worked with children who were neurodiverse, and I kind of was able to I kind of noticed like very small things of I remember teachers were saying, "Oh, I don't know why this person does things this way." And then I just kind of wanted to say, "Oh, well, maybe there's you're neurodivergent who we're not sure." And then yeah, it was and it was like interesting to kind of like do those sessions, because then I thought like, "Oh, was I like that when I was their age?" And yeah, it was a lot of kind of I took it a lot to personal therapy from there. And then even in kind of my time at uni, I felt more able to ask for support and get kind of adjustments in place. And that was a really big thing for me. I'm very bad at asking for help. I used to be a huge people pleaser where I would just say, "Oh, I'll just power through. It's fine. I'll do that." And then I would end up burning myself out. But now kind of setting those kind of boundaries helps me kind of work better. And I know that if I'm burnt out or like on like running on like 1% charge, I'm not going to be fully present for the people that I work with. And then working, I'm not sure if I've worked with people that are with adults who are neurodivergent, but then I'm quite curious to work in that field and just to kind of see yeah, just to kind of see if there's any similarities or differences. But I think from there with neurodiversity, it's a very no two people are the same. And I think it's great seeing a lot more therapists that do have ASD or have ADHD or even both, talking about their experiences of like having ADHD, for example, and how it can kind of how they kind of like use it in their practice. Because I remember I didn't want to say, "Oh, I don't want it to like kind of make it all about me," but I know kind of that it will, like being neurodivergent, it will kind of inform my practice to some extent. But it's just kind of how to like using that for good. And yeah, it's just very, very interesting.
Andrea, thank you so much for sharing just your experience and the things you went through, and like you said, homework, and then finding out and being diagnosed with ASD, and being mentioned in conversations with
Mhm.
teachers, and I guess pushing past that. How did you push past that? How did you push past that? I think that's the question.
Do you mean in terms of like the anxieties or just you kind of like anxiety? Yeah. Um, I'm honestly not too sure. I think when I was younger, I just kind of I remember when I was in an appointment, my psychiatrist asked if I'd wondered if I had ASD, and I immediately just said no. Like, I'm smart, I can't have that condition. And then I guess I just kind of suppressed it, which wasn't the best thing to do. But kind of being in experiences where I had kind of had a bit of a kind of burnout or breakdown, it would just be a lot of kind of resting. And then kind of from reaching those really low points, I've just kind of told myself I never want to get to that point ever again. So I did put in a lot of work to kind of look after myself. And I'm not like I'm not a perfect person. I'm not like healed or anything, but I just make sure to I just kind of told myself, like, as cheesy as it sounds, to just be kind to myself. And I found that I noticed I would always tell my friends if they were kind of struggling with issues, I would tell them, "Oh, you need to be kind to yourself." And then I'm thinking, why am I not doing the same for me? Where if I could think so negatively about myself, and then it's just thinking, would I tell this to a friend? And like, I would never talk to one of my friends this way. So why am I talking to myself this way? And yeah, I'd say kind of my own personal therapy has been a kind of godsend. So I've been going to see a psychotherapist for about almost 3 years now, and it's great. Even though it's just like your traditional talking therapy, it's a really nice contrast to have compared to just making music. And yeah, that's been a great way for me to kind of make sense and process things, just kind of like my kind of experiences from my childhood, and how it kind of comes into light now, and just kind of informs me as not just as a music therapist, but as a person as well.
And that's so inspiring. And thank you for not throwing in the towel and
Mm.
not giving up. And I can imagine how many times you were so close to doing that. Which then leads me to asking you about the advocacy
Yes.
within training. I'd love to hear more on that, and please take us into that, please.
Yeah. So I noticed kind of in my training or just kind of in general life. So if I was kind of if I was at, say, like a party, and I was chatting to people, and we were just always sharing the what is it that you do, and I would say, oh, I'm doing a master's degree. Oh, what are you doing a master's in? Music therapy. Oh, what's that? And then just explaining what it is, or even just like if I was going on dates as well, and it would always be oh, music therapy, what's that? And it was some people, they knew what it was, or some of them had an idea, or they would share like kind of their perception on it, and I didn't want to tell them that's wrong, but I could see why they would think that way. So I found it was a lot of me kind of explaining what it is in a more like kind of, I was just always telling myself, how do I summarize this in a way um to kind of make it understandable for like people of all ages, but also without making the other person feel like stupid for not knowing what it is, because like music therapy was only kind of a recognized profession in like the 1950s or 60s, so it's very much still a baby. It's only like 60 years old. um so it was mostly in my final year placement where I noticed I had to do a lot of kind of advocating for the profession. So when I went on my placement, which was in a very busy NHS setting, I was being introduced as a music therapy student, and straight away people would be like, "Oh, great, music classes or music lessons." And then I would explain kind of like music therapy. I would say it's pretty much just like your traditional therapy, but it's using music more, making music rather than talking. And then it would be, oh, so you're teaching them instruments. I would say I'm not necessarily teaching them how to play, but if they wanted to learn something, then of course we could bring it into that kind of like the framework of skills development if that was a goal that they're working towards. And then there was a big assumption as well about music therapy being an extension of occupational therapy, for example, because that was the primary allied health profession in that setting. And it was a lot of, if I had people that were referred for music therapy, and I would work so hard planning with staff and say, okay, they're going to have their session. Like, I'm in on these days, I can see them for this session. I would go and check in the wards and ask, how's it been going? Is this person around? They would say, oh, they're away today for a home visit. And I was like, oh, okay, I had a session planned, but that's fine. And kind of the way of my brain works, if I would just find myself getting frustrated, like, oh, I've put all this planning in, and like, oh, it's not happening. And then I would have to explain and say that it is really important for the therapy to be consistent, and consistent at the same time every week or fortnightly. And some staff, no, actually, the staff, they were accommodating and very supportive. But I think it was from them kind of observing music therapy. So I worked with an award where it was adults living with dementia. And I remember running an open music therapy group there. So it meant people, they could take it part as much or as little as they'd like to take part. And I always encourage staff to take part in the group if they wanted to. And then I was obviously met with that, oh, I can't sing, I don't know how to play an instrument. So there was that kind of assumption there that you need to be a musician or a performer to benefit from music therapy. And that's not the case. Someone who's never picked up an instrument before can have music therapy. And from there, it was interesting to see over time in that setting that staff would be more like motivated to take part, which was great to see because then I got to kind of I spoke to some of the staff on that ward who were interested in doing some music activities with the people there. So it meant I could kind of share kind of some of my skills and pass it on to them so they could tailor that into a kind of more like therapeutic activity. And yeah, so it was a lot of advocating on that role. And a lot of it was nice and heartwarming to hear from staff to say that they wished that I could just stay as a permanent part of the team. But then there's all about things with funding, which is kind of out of anyone's control. But the advocacy, it did work because I was awarded an award from my lecturers about my work in advocating for the profession, both on my placement and just kind of out with that. So I'm also, I've now recently been appointed chair of the Scottish Music Therapy Trust, which helps promote the profession of music therapy in Scotland. And we also organise continuing professional development events, there we go, in Scotland for music therapists and trainees. And we also do the networking events. So yeah, I absolutely love advocating for the profession, and that kind of led me to create my Instagram account as well. So it's a space to kind of bring awareness of what it is for people of all professions as well, and even a space for other kind of music or arts therapists to connect as well.
Firstly, congratulations.
Thank you.
That is incredible. For anyone that wants to come into the music therapy world and embark on that journey, Andrea,
Mhm.
what would you say? What advice would you give them?
Oh, great. Recently made a post about this, so I can remember that. I would say um that I really advise taking at least a year out from finishing your undergraduate degree to then the master's. Um, there were some people that I trained with that were straight from undergrad, and that's not to say that was a bad thing for them because um everyone is different. But I would strongly advise at least a year out because you'll have been studying for 3-4 years and you just deserve to have a bit of a break from kind of university work, especially if you've gone straight from school, like your primary school, high school, straight into uni, and then another one. You deserve to have a bit of a break. Like there's like no rush, and then in that time you can use that to um gain kind of work experience working with different client groups. So and that's partly why I worked as a pupil support assistant in a mainstream primary school. I already had experience working with children when I did some volunteering in high school, and also just with my private teaching. I mostly teach children and young people, which is great. And yeah, and just during that time, I felt more kind of confident, like working with different groups. So I was able to kind of take that into my interview and then use that experience there. And then and from there I spoke about how from that I'd be open to working with different client groups as well, just to kind of get a new perspective. And other bits of advice I would say is that when you're studying as well to take time just for you, even if it's carving out an activity that you do once a week. Because even though you're not in uni every day. There is a lot of reading to do. Yeah, and you can approach that in short bursts. So for me, I work even when I'm doing my violin practice, I have to work in short bursts to kind of let myself absorb what I've done. So I would do the same with reading. I would because some of these journal articles, they're interesting, but they can be hard to read. Like, I mean, especially the older ones. I remember like reading this, I was like, "What is this?" And then, um, yeah. So just yeah, taking time to do something fun that isn't just like academic work, even if you have like a hobby that's outside of music. Like for me, I like to do a lot of painting, something that I've been looking to get back into doing. But it was even just kind of say like meeting a friend for a coffee or something, and just kind of taking a bit of time for you and a bit of advice for people as well. Kind of going in, I would just say just play, like keep playing as much as you can, even with other people. Um, as well, just kind of do that and the kind of playing just for yourself really. It can be so hard when you're studying like on the course you have like essays due and you're preparing for like a presentation and like a final like viva exam, and then you find that all the playing that you're doing is on placement when you're working with clients. So having that time, even if you are on placement, just kind of that time in between sessions, so just do a bit of playing, or even a day or so after, just yeah, play, just keep playing. So I do some playing with an orchestra in Edinburgh, which is only a few times a year, but I find that it's great for me because it's something that's like kind of separate from the music therapy world. It's still in the music one, but it's just kind of like a branch out. So it's something where I'm like, oh, I'm just playing because I love playing in orchestras, and it's yeah. So that's my advice that I would give. Kind of like take out a bit of time if you're thinking of going straight from undergrad, that work experience, carving the time for something that's just for you, that brings and sparks you joy, and to just keep playing.
Andrea, before you go, I want to throw some fun, rapid questions at you. Is that okay?
Yes. Yes.
If you had to work somewhere remotely, anywhere in the world,
Mm.
where would it be and why?
That is a very, very good question. I don't know why I'm going to say this, but I would say one of the islands in the north of Norway, and that's where my grandma's from. And the reason I choose this is because during the summer, the sun never sets. So I think you get maybe about 10 minutes of like darkness, and the rest is just all daylight. And it is beautiful. The only downside is in the winter, it's very dark. But I would say if I did that, I would choose to maybe just go away in winter and then come back to get a bit of sun.
Nice. Nice. Favorite violinist?
Nicola Benedetti. She's a Scottish violinist, and I did a workshop. I played in an orchestra when I was 14 with other young musicians, and I got to meet her, which was amazing. And I've even had the chance to play with her a few other times and meet her more times. And I met her again 5 years ago, and I remember she's like, "Oh, I recognize you. You did this back in 2015." And I was like, "Oh, yes, I did." And the work that she does for music education is really, really inspiring. She has the Benedetti Foundation, which makes music education accessible for people of all ages, and there's lots of great training opportunities for string musicians and also teachers as well. I did one of the workshops back in 2020, and I learned a lot, which was really, really great. And yeah, she's incredibly talented and also a genuinely nice person.
Favorite piece of music?
Favorite piece of music. Classical, it's Claire de Lune by Debussy on the piano. I almost always cry every time I hear it. And I found a violin arrangement of it a few years ago, which I love playing. And um, yeah, and then more kind of pop music. I absolutely love Taylor Swift. I remember buying her one of her albums when I was 10 years old, and I've seen her live twice, which was great. But I absolutely love the song Enchanted. I remember listening to it on repeat when I was about 12 years old, so it always holds that's like a place there, like when I was like kind of growing up, like Taylor Swift and her music was always like constantly there. So yeah, yeah, she's definitely like my favorite artist, one of them.
What is your favorite chords to play?
Chords to play. Oh my God, that's so specific. And I love playing the chords. Like, yeah. Um so on the ukulele, and that's where I do most of the chords. I love a nice G7 chord and also a G major chord because they're both in the shape of triangles. So your G7 is kind of an outward facing triangle, and then a G major reverses. So I really like those ones. And I also like I think it's an A minor seventh chord, which is just strummed with no fingers down. So it's a nice and simple chord.
Favorite book or film?
Oh, favorite book. Oh my God, there's far too many to choose from. I'm just having a little look at my books here. I've got so many behind me. Very, very hard to choose from. I really like the book Little Fires Everywhere. They made a series about it, and it explores kind of the relationship of explores kind of dynamics of a woman and her family. They're a very like affluent family living in like like a some the suburbia in America, and then she rents out one of her properties to a single mother and her daughter. And it's just and there's a lot of kind of like the family dynamics, intergenerational trauma that's there. So that's one that I have reread a few times, and the series is also great as well. And with films, there is far too many to choose from. But yeah, I can't think of any films. It's kind of drawing a blank there.
That's okay.
Yep.
Do you have a favorite quote, Andrea?
Favorite quote? I do, but it has completely slipped my mind. Oh yes, no, and I remember now. It's so one from Winnicott. I remember looking at it in my training. So it was a therapist who cannot play is not suitable for the work, and that was something that kind of helped me through my training. So, looking at Winnicott and the whole importance of play in therapy. So from there, it was if yeah, I held on to it a lot from my first year placement in particular, where I felt quite self conscious. I'm like just playing and like playing the instruments or just generally being playful with clients. But then, yeah, I just did I remember doing a lot of reading on Winnicott and the whole that purpose there, and then about play and just the the kind of origins of it. So thinking back to like the mother infant relationship there, and then and just kind of like my own kind of like when I was growing up, a lot of the learning that you do is from like playing and interacting other people and other children. So then I was thinking like from there, like oh the idea of play, it comes from like the literal playing of instruments, but also that interaction with another person there. And yeah, that's something that I really like hold on to now, and it's something that yeah, I've definitely applied into practice, like even on my placement working with much older adults as well. There is still that playful element there where it was kind of come through from in a way they would just kind of like talk a lot about childhood and kind of act in a childlike playful way. So I felt kind of more comfortable doing that in my role as a therapist and also just in myself as well. Like it's so, so important to be playful and as cheesy as it sounds, to kind of let your inner child out from time to time.
And last question for you, and you can finish the sentence for me. If it wasn't for music therapy, I would be
A stand-up comedian.
stand-up comedian.
Yeah, I've been told by people that I'm funny, so I take that. I did a lot of work at the Edinburgh Fringe as a kind of front of house assistant. It was a tiring job, but it was great fun. And I remember I forgot what it was that I said, but one of the artists that I was kind of like was working the kind of floor I was working at, he was like, "Oh, you're funny. You should go into comedy." And yeah, I remember it in lockdown. I found my teenage diary, so I did dramatic readings of it for friends, and just like sections of it. And obviously I would like kind of like edit some, like omit some information, and or kind of like over exaggerates. Well, no, actually I didn't do a lot of over exaggeration. It was already over dramatic as it was. But but I had some friends just say like, "Oh, the dramatic readings are great. You should bring them back." And I'm like, "No, I'm like almost finished the diary." But yeah, but it's just kind of like I'd always say like, "Oh, I should do that," but then I'm like, "No, I'm too shy to do that." But who knows?
Andrea, it's been such a great time speaking to you. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. And it's so amazing to hear everything that you know now. And I'm just looking forward to seeing what's next for you. And I know you're going to bring just so much greatness and healing and transformation in the field. So I look forward to seeing your
Oh,
journey.
thank you so much.
People have heard you today. How best would it be for them to reach out to you and speak?
So they can reach out to me on my Instagram page at Music Therapy with Andrea, or they can also reach out to me on my LinkedIn, which is just my like, first name and last name.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have been your host, Calvin Anderson with the Check-In with podcast. We have had Andrea Jardine today. Thank you so much. Listeners, have a good night. Take care. Speak soon. God bless.